2 days ago, on July the 11th, a new law went into effect in this country. And most people have no idea it happened, because when a housing law this size passes, the headlines cover the mortgage rate story, the Wall Street story, the parts that traders care about, and the parts that actually touch everyday people, especially older Americans, get buried or skipped entirely. Not today, because buried inside this new law are 6 things that could genuinely change your situation. Money for home repairs, the kind you do not pay back. New options if you want to downsize and cannot find anywhere to go. Stronger protections if you rent. Real help for rural communities where the shortage is worst. A new door into a low-cost mortgage. And a rule aimed directly at the Wall Street companies that have been buying up the houses your children and grandchildren keep losing bids on. 6 things. And I'm going to walk you through every single one in plain English. One more thing before we start. There is a date buried inside this law that I want you to circle before we are done today. Not the date it passed, it already passed. A date coming this winter that changes who is allowed to buy the house next door to you. Hold on to that. We are coming back to it. My name is Kevin. Here is the number that explains why this law exists at all. 75%. 75% of adults 50 and older say they want to stay in their current home as they age. And yet millions of those same people are stuck. Stuck because the home needs repairs they cannot afford. Stuck because there is nowhere smaller to move. Stuck because rent keeps climbing, and the Social Security check does not climb with it. The bill is called the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, House Resolution 6644. It became law 2 days ago, and here is how it got there. President Trump did not sign it. He also did not veto it. Under the Constitution, when that happens, a bill becomes law anyway after 10 days, which is exactly what happened here. But understand why he could not stop it, even if he wanted to. In the Senate, it passed 85-5. In the House, 358-32. You will not find a bipartisan vote that lopsided anywhere else in Washington right now. Almost nobody voted against it, because the problem it attacks is so obvious that opposing it was nearly impossible to justify. The country is short roughly 10 million homes. That shortage is why prices went through the roof, why renting got so expensive, and why more than 12 million households, headed by someone 65 or older, are spending over 30% of their income on housing. Housing economists have a name for that: cost-burdened. A third of every older household in this country carries that label right now. Not because anyone mismanaged anything, because the math around them changed faster than a fixed income could ever keep up with. That is who this law was written for. Now let's walk through what actually changes. Change 1. The Whole Home Repairs Program. This is federal grant money, meaning money you do not pay back, for lower-income homeowners, especially seniors, to make the repairs that keep a home livable. Grab bars, ramps, wider doorways. Weatherization, which cuts the energy bill. Removal of hazards like lead paint or mold, and the big structural repairs, roofing, electrical, heating, the ones that become emergencies if nobody touches them. These are not cosmetic upgrades. They are the difference between someone safely aging in place and someone ending up in a hospital before they had to. The program is a grant. Eligibility is tied to income thresholds in your local area, and it is being rolled out state by state. Let me show you who this is for. Walter is 79. He and his wife June have owned the same house in Peoria, Illinois for 43 years. The roof needs replacing. Walter climbed that ladder himself 2 summers ago, and June made him promise he never would again. He has kept the promise, which means the roof has waited 2 summers, getting a little worse with every hard rain. A new roof was going to cost them somewhere north of $11,000, money they did not have sitting around at 79. Some of this comes as an outright grant. Some of it, depending on your state, comes as a forgivable loan, meaning it is structured as a loan on paper, but forgiven over time as long as you keep living in the home. Either way, the point is the same. Nobody is asking Walter to pay it back out of a fixed income. This program exists because the federal government finally put real money behind the idea that people who want to stay home deserve help doing it safely. Watch for announcements from your local area agency on aging and your state housing finance agency. Those are the offices that will run this locally. Change 2. Somewhere to actually downsize into. June, from a moment ago, has been asking about this for a year. 3 different real estate agents. The same question every time. Anything smaller? Closer to the kids? Every answer came back the same. Nothing on the market or nothing they could afford. She is not alone. This is the complaint I hear constantly. I want something smaller. There is nothing out there. That is not an exaggeration. In most of the country, the market for smaller, affordable homes is simply too thin. This law pushes to fix that from several directions at once. It encourages accessory dwelling units, the small backyard cottages some people call in-law suites. It encourages duplexes and townhouses. It funds converting empty office buildings and old malls into housing. And it modernizes financing for manufactured and modular homes, which have quietly become high-quality, energy-efficient, and far cheaper than a traditional site-built house. They have historically been underfinanced and over-restricted by zoning. This law raises loan limits and cuts through some of that. One specific fix is worth naming. The law removes an old requirement that manufactured homes keep a permanent steel chassis, the metal frame originally built for towing them. Almost none of these homes are ever moved once placed, but that requirement alone was adding $5,000 to $10,000 to the cost of every one. Removing it does not sound dramatic. For a retiree pricing out a smaller place, that is real money coming off the top before anyone bids. For June, this does not mean a new building goes up next month. It means that over the next few years, more price points and more options should start appearing in the towns families like hers actually want to live in. Change 3. Stronger footing if you rent. Rents have surged almost everywhere, and the people hurt worst are people on a fixed income, watching rent climb $200 a year while the check does not move. This law does 3 specific things for renters. It expands the Housing Choice Voucher Program, what most people call Section 8, by 100,000 units and makes it easier for landlords to actually accept them. It works to preserve existing affordable rental housing, so units already built do not quietly convert to market rate. And it creates a formal complaint channel, specifically for tenants of large corporate landlords. That last one matters more than it sounds. When a billion-dollar investment company owns your building and the heat is not working, you have a letter you wrote at the kitchen table. They have a legal department. June's friend Dolores rents from exactly that kind of building. 2 winters in a row, her heat went out for days at a time, and every call went to a hold line that eventually just disconnected. She had nowhere to escalate it, no local office, no name, just the hold music over and over. This does not erase that gap. But for the first time, there is a federal place to take the complaint. Now, I have covered 3 changes in about 8 minutes, with numbers, program names, and agencies attached to each one. Nobody holds on to all of that from a video. I would not either. That is exactly why this channel built the Quiet Rules. The written version of everything explained here. Plain English, large print, organized by exactly which office to call, and what to say when you get them on the phone. If a program like the Repairs Grant opens applications in your county, the families who move first are the ones with their paperwork, already organized before the announcement drops. Income documentation, homeowner records, the forms these applications actually ask for. That is precisely what sits in the drawer this guide becomes. Get your copy. The link is in the description below. Or scan the QR code on your screen right now. It is also in the pinned comment. 7-day guarantee, always. Now, Walter and June have a son, Ray, 31 years old. Ray has been outbid 4 times on a starter home by a company he has never heard of, paying cash, sight unseen. He watched the same listing disappear 4 separate times the day after he finally worked up the courage to bid. Not to a family, to a name on a closing document nobody recognized. The last 3 changes in this law are aimed squarely at Ray's problem. Change 4. Rural housing and manufactured home support. If you live outside a big city, in a small town, or a rural county, this section was written with you specifically in mind. The law pushes 2 things. Zoning reform, where HUD is now required to publish guidelines, helping local governments update rules that currently make it illegal to build anything but 1 large single-family home per lot. Those rules made sense in a different era. They do not make sense with a 10 million home shortage. This law does not tear up local zoning by force. It requires HUD to hand communities the playbook and ties some federal funding to actually using it. Slow, deliberate pressure, instead of a mandate from Washington. And faster approvals, streamlining federal environmental review for building on land already developed, which used to take years and now moves faster. Paired with the manufactured housing reforms from a moment ago, this matters enormously in rural areas, where there is often no new subdivision going up at all, but there is land, and there are affordable manufactured homes that can now be financed more easily than before. Change 5. A door into a smaller mortgage. The law creates a pilot for small dollar mortgages, loans of $100,000 or less, which can include help with the down payment, closing costs, appraisals, and title insurance. Lenders have historically avoided these smaller loans because they are not profitable enough to bother with. This pilot is built to change that math. For someone like Ray, looking at a modest starter home in a smaller market, this is the loan category that has been hardest to find help with. It will not help someone shopping in a city where the median home runs $400,000. But in the smaller towns where a lot of these families live, a $100,000 mortgage is not a hypothetical. It is exactly the size of loan Ray has been asking his bank about and getting told politely that it is not worth their time. Which brings us to the 6th change and the date I asked you to circle. Change 6, the rule aimed at the companies outbidding Ray. Here is what has been happening, plainly. Investment firms and large companies have been buying up single-family homes in huge numbers, not to live in them, to rent them out, to hold inventory, to push prices up. And it has worked. Here is what this law does about it. Any company or investment group that controls at least 350 single-family homes is generally prohibited from buying additional existing homes. That restriction takes effect 180 days after the law went into effect, which puts the real enforcement date right around early January of next year. That is the date. Circle it. Because right now, between today and that date, is exactly the window these large investors have to keep buying under the old rules. I want to be honest about the limits of this because that matters. Companies are not required to sell homes they already own. The law restricts future purchases, not existing holdings. And a determined group of investors could, in theory, split into smaller entities to stay under the threshold. Congress is aware of that, and if it becomes a pattern, expect a tighter follow-up rule. Here is the scale we are talking about. As of last year, the largest investors, the ones owning more than 1,000 homes each, controlled roughly 500,000 properties nationwide. That sounds enormous, and in dollar terms it is, but it is a little over 1/3 of 1% of all the single-family housing in this country. Small as a share of the whole market, concentrated enough in certain neighborhoods to be the reason a normal family loses the bid 4 times in a row. And the penalty for violating this law is not a slap on the wrist, up to $1 million per violation, or 3 times the purchase price, whichever is larger. That is enough to make a compliance department pay attention. But here is the honest, long-term effect. If large institutional buyers pull back from the market, more of the existing homes that come up for sale become available to individual buyers, people like Ray. People who have spent 2 years watching cash offers from companies with no name they recognize beat them to houses they could actually afford. This is the first federal law to directly target that dynamic. Now, before the checklist, let's be honest about the whole picture. Because I told Walter and June's story at the start not to oversell this law, but because it is genuinely true that this bill was built, section by section, around the exact problems families like theirs are living with. The 180-day window is frustrating if you want it faster. The ways wealthy investors might work around the threshold are real. The repairs program still has to roll out county by county, and that takes time. Housing economists are honest about this too. None of this drops home prices next month. Construction takes years, not weeks. The realistic promise here is not instant relief. It is direction. More supply, more protection, fewer barriers. Moving the same direction for the first time in a long time, instead of the market just grinding families down further. But this is also true. This is the most substantive, most bipartisan housing bill this country has passed in decades. 85 to 5 in the Senate, 358 to 32 in the House. That is not a close call. The people in Washington looked at what this shortage is doing to seniors, to renters, to first-time buyers, to rural towns, and agreed on something, which almost never happens anymore. And once again, here is the part that decides whether any of it actually reaches you. None of these 6 programs knock on your door. You have to know they exist, and then you have to apply, which is exactly the same principle behind everything else this channel covers. Protections and programs that already exist, but only work for the households that go looking for them. Think about Walter's roof for a second. $11,000 if he pays for it himself. 0 if he finds the right office and asks the right question. The only difference between those two numbers is whether the paperwork gets found in time. That is true of every program in this video. The gap is never the money. The gap is always the knowing. The Quiet Rules holds every one of those checklists in one place. The account protections, the incapacity shields, and now, as these housing programs roll out locally, the applications and contacts for this law as well. Written down before you need it, not scrambled together after. Get your copy. The link is in the description below. Scan the QR code on your screen right now, or grab it from the pinned comment. 7 days, full refund if it is not worth its place in your drawer. Now, your action checklist. 1. If your home needs repairs to stay safe, call your local area agency on aging this month and ask specifically about the whole home repairs program. Ask them directly whether your income qualifies and whether the funding in your state comes as a grant or a forgivable loan. 2. If you want to downsize, start watching your local zoning news and ask about manufactured and modular options nearby. Financing on them just changed in your favor. 3. If you rent and something is wrong with a corporate-owned building, ask your property manager directly whether they participate in the new HUD complaint resource. If they cannot answer, that is your answer too, and it is worth documenting the problem in writing regardless. 4. If someone in your family is trying to buy their first home, have them ask their lender specifically about the new small dollar mortgage pilot. Not every lender will have it ready on day 1. If yours does not, ask when they expect to, and ask which lenders in your area already do. 5. Circle that date. Early January. If you know a family that has been outbid repeatedly, tell them the rules on who can buy are about to change. It will not fix every market overnight, but it means the next 6 months are worth watching closely, instead of assuming nothing will ever change. And 6. Share this video with the person you know who has been quietly struggling with a repair they cannot afford, or a grandchild who has been priced out again and again. These 6 changes only help the people who know they exist. If this was useful, subscribe before you go. This channel tracks the laws that decide what happens to your home, your money, and your family, whether they are buried in a headline or not. Walter is getting his roof looked at next month. June found 2 manufactured home communities near her daughter she had never heard of before this week. And Ray is calling his lender about that small dollar pilot on Monday. None of that fixes everything overnight. The roof still has to get inspected. The manufactured home communities still have to be visited in person. The lender still has to say yes. But 2 weeks ago, none of those 3 things were even on the table. That is the actual difference this law made for one family. Means not a miracle, means just a door that used to be closed, now standing open. Means none of that happened because a headline changed. Means it happened because someone in their family means finally heard about it in time to act. Means I'm Kevin. Thanks for watching. Do not forget to check the Quiet Rules at kevinexplains.shop.